Welcome to Puck Academy, a show about how hockey players grow on and off the ice. I'm Jason Jacobs, the host, and each week I talk with players, coaches, and experts shaping the future of player development. Today's guest is Scott McDougall, the Senior Associate Head Coach for Sacred Heart University's men's hockey program, the Pioneers Division I program. They have an absolutely fabulous facility that I drool over from a distance. And I was excited for this one because Scott's got such an interesting story. He's been with Sacred Heart since 2009, spent a couple years coaching at Wesleyan before that, my alma mater. And he was a 2007 graduate of the University of Connecticut. So he played D1 hockey, where he finished with 22 goals and 21 assists for 43 career points in 89 games. And he's also been active over the years as a camp and club team counselor, instructor, and coach, working with Massachusetts Player Development Camp, handling 13 to 15-year-olds, the Connecticut Hockey Experience with 13 to 18-year-olds. And he also was the head coach of the Neponset Valley River Rats U18 team in the Massachusetts Select League for 5 seasons. So Scott has seen the game from a lot of different angles. And not only that, as I've made the rounds, everyone wants to know what these D1 coaches are seeing because the landscape's been changing so much. And Scott gives a really candid, raw point of view in terms of what's happening on the ground. I mean, it sounds like with these lawsuits going back and forth, the rules are changing so frequently that it can be hard to get momentum in any one direction because the rules of the game keep changing under your feet. We have a great discussion about that, the evolving landscape. We talk about Scott's journey in the game. We talk about clubs and privatization. We talk about specialization happening earlier and earlier. We talk with Scott's recruiting and scouting hat on about what he looks for in players and how young is too young to scout, and whether the kids that are best early are the best later, and if there's any telltale signs that a kid's got it. We also just have a great discussion about the state of the game, what's going well, what's not going well, what Scott hopes for in the future, and his advice for anyone trying to navigate the path as a player, a parent, or others involved with this great game. Scott, welcome to the show.
Happy to be here. It's been a crazy couple days, so I'm on my phone right now because and this is a crazy recruiting story, but we'll start with this. So when I agreed to do this, I was planning to be driving during it from like Ottawa to Avon for the Avon tournament today, but I was up in the WHL recruiting. We just committed a kid in Red Deer, so I was up meeting with him, and I went to a game in Edmonton where the Oilers play on Sunday night, and park, lock the car, go into the rink, pay the $18 in this lot, which, not in the greatest area, but whatever. So I go in the game. I see Dan Jewell there, actually. I have a red-eye flight that night. Dan's the Merrimack assistant coach. And I go talk to a recruit. We're recruiting a kid that was in the game. So I talked to him after the game, and I asked Dan, I'm like, hey, what are you doing? Like, what do you got the next couple of days? He's like, well, I'm staying here for a few days, recruiting, sounds good. I'm like, where's your airport? He's like, well, it's over at it's over by the airport in Edmonton. I'm like, well, I got the red eye tonight. You want to get dinner before? He's like, sure. So I go grab dinner with him, and I pull in about 9:30 for my midnight flight, and I go to grab my backpack, and I'm like, I thought it was on the seat next to me. I'm like, it must be in the back seat. Wasn't there, wasn't in the trunk. I'm like, I don't have my backpack, which has my passport in it. So I'm like, this isn't good. So I tell the rental guy, I'm like, I don't have my backpack. He's like, maybe you left it. I'm like, God, I travel a lot. I don't think I would have left it anywhere, But I look in my car, and I had been driving from Red Deer to Edmonton. I had a phone charger there because my phone was almost dead after the meeting. So at that time, when I realized that was missing, I'm like, I don't have my passport. Like, I'm not going to be able to fly home, So this happens on Sunday. They're like, you got to go. There's a police station inside here. I go talk to them. They're like, where did this happen? I'm like, in Edmonton. They're like, you got to drive back to Edmonton. So the airport's 30 minutes outside of Edmonton. So I drive back to Edmonton. I, get the police report. I deal with all that stuff. They're never going to find it, obviously. They stole the backpack. not the
Wait,
best.
so did they break a window? Or did you leave the car unlocked?
No, so they like popped it in the back. I realized it after, So I just never looked. I got in the car, drove away, So they went through the back, like the back door. There's like a way with these cars that I had that you can kind of like pop the lock, whatever. So without causing like major damage, like they didn't break the window, but damaged the side to like pop the lock, So anyway, I get the police report. I'm like, all right, like I'm an American. Like, what do I do? They're like, yeah, you got to go to the consulate. I'm like, okay, I'll write down the address. So I'm writing down the address. They're like, it's in Calgary. I'm like, how far is that? Like, it's 3 hours. So this is like 11 o'clock at night, 12 o'clock in the morning at this point. So I'm like, man, that's not good. So I end up finishing all the police stuff, find the serial number for my laptop, just a bunch of stuff, right? So I go to sleep about 1, get up at 6, back on the phone with the police. They were awesome. They were super, like, I'm really sorry this happened to you. I'm like, it is what it is, So I drive to Calgary on Monday and I go to the consulate and they're like, hey, do you have an appointment? I'm like, no, like I got my stuff robbed last night. Like I didn't know I needed an appointment. They're like, well, you need an appointment. We'll get you in tomorrow. You got to do this, and the next thing. So I end up having to get passport, pictures. I'm running around on this checklist they give you of things you need to do. Luckily, I had my phone in my wallet, so I was able to stay in a hotel, right? So finally, I go back there again. Tuesday morning, you got to put your phone in the locker. I'm sitting there for about 3 hours. I finally get an emergency passport and got a flight out Tuesday night and finally got home just after midnight, Wednesday morning. And now I don't have a computer, which is why I'm just on my phone. I don't really have a passport. I have to go deal with some things to get a real passport. I have the emergency passport. So nightmare last few days for me. So like I said, I thought I was going to be driving for about 6 hours with all the time in the world. But I am back in my office and my 12 o'clock meeting is with our IT just to sign some paperwork and stuff so I can get a new computer. So that was my last couple days.
Well, I'm so sorry that happened to you. We went to a tournament. I think it was the summer before this one in Canada, in Montreal. And I think in the rink parking lot, there were like 8 or 9 cars broken into, including like one of the teams we were playing lost a bunch of like all their hockey gear was stolen. And that, I think that whole thing, as crappy as it was, might have also been a commercial for why coaches leave to become youth hockey directors or player development people.
I mean, it was
it's the road lifestyle takes a toll. Same thing with me. It's like why I don't want to run a company right now, because like the road lifestyle, it's like, you get to a certain age, you have young kids.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
It's just, it's a big, I mean, you really got to love it, as you know, because there's a lot that you're sacrificing to live the dream.
It was a tough couple days there. There was no games to go to. I'm just sitting in Calgary with no idea. You can't book a flight without a passport number when you're traveling internationally. I didn't even know when I was getting out of there. So it was a tough couple days. But yeah, life on the road.
Well, welcome back.
You're bound to have some problems over the years. That was a first for me. So I've had my passport the whole time. So usually it was in my pocket, but my pockets weren't very deep. And the rink there, it's where the Oilers play. It's a top 5 rink in the NHL. So it's beautiful. So I didn't bring in like a heavy coat that I would normally have my passport in the pocket of. You know what I mean? So anyway, I lost my clothes, my passport. I was in the same clothes for 3 days, So it was quite a trip, but I'm glad to be back. So
I have one little one for you. We had an initial discussion before we booked this call, and I can't remember if I told you or I didn't told you, but like hockey was a big part of my life growing up, and I played for a year and a couple games in Division III, and then I quit. And honestly, I'm almost 50, and like I still have demons about it, not just because of not taking advantage of the opportunities I had in college, but that started well before that, right? And it's not that I would have been something in the sport, but just whatever my potential was, I didn't reach it, right? But that college was Wesleyan, and I saw that you spent some time coaching there when I was prepping for this discussion. I didn't realize that when we chatted initially, but yeah, I went straight from my crappy public high school program into D3, no juniors, no repeating, no anything, wasn't very good, and that's what you could do back then. Obviously, the landscape's changed a lot. Did you go to Duke's Memorial this summer?
He
was before your time.
He was before my time. So Chris, who I work for, obviously knew him, but that was before my time, so I didn't know him. So
Yeah, so I was there. So I met Chris for the first time there, and met a bunch of the current players. And yeah, it gave me an inferiority complex because the current players are like specimens relative to our squad. They're all like big, like V-shaped backs.
our head coach here, CJ, his son's on the team now at Wesleyan. So he's a senior now. So I've always obviously followed Wesleyan, but we even follow him closer now. And having the opportunity work for Chris was great. We had a great time. He's a great friend of mine, and always enjoy talking to him. So.
Okay, well, down to business. So for starters, there's not a lot of information out there about you in the public domain, and then the interviews that you've given have tended to be pretty kind of this season at Sacred Heart specific. So I'm psyched just to have you come on and kind of go back in the Wayback Machine because I can't find it anywhere online. Is that by design?
I don't know. I guess we'll find out.
So how'd you first get into the sport?
My dad was a hockey player. I grew up, in hockey. And it's funny the difference between, hockey has been everything I've wanted to do my whole life. And, by the time my kids are 6 and 3, my son's 3, and he doesn't have that same, like, I was like, hey, Mom, was I? No, by then you were all into hockey all day. He's into tons of different things. So my whole life I've been, really excited to play hockey. I started playing on a pond in my backyard, when I was 3.5, and then came up through youth hockey playing Tri-County Saints and High Park and Junior Bruins. And, eventually got to, I grew up in Mansfield as you showed with your shirt, the Great Woods shirt there.
Yeah, before we were recording, but yeah, I wore that for you.
Yes. So I grew up in Mansfield. Mansfield High School had just kind of started the hockey program there, but I ended up kind of deciding between going to Catholic Memorial or Mount St. Charles. I ended up going to Catholic Memorial in 7th grade. And, that was a great experience, great program there. Playing for Bill Hansen was he's a legendary figure in Mass high school hockey. So, I think for me, like always wanting to be part of the game, like I really looked up to Coach Hansen. He did a great job. Different coach than how you're playing nowadays, he was certainly different from the players you have to coach now. But I played 3 years my freshman.
Man, I don't want to cut you off, but I kind of have to push on that. So how are the players different now, and how is he different?
God, you could be much harder on people back then. You could coach with intimidation, and players just innately respected their coach at that point. Nowadays in coaching, you really have to make sure you're relating the players, especially at the college level. It's a completely different game. When I went to UConn, like if I wanted to leave and go somewhere, you have to sit a year. It is the complete opposite of that at this point,
Because of the portal?
Because of the portal and just the way players are and what have you, So, for me at CM, like we had great respect, but also like fear. And for Coach Hansen, like almost hiding from him at times, where in today's world, you need to be as approachable, relatable as you can possibly be to your players. So I played CM for 3 years. I played junior hockey my senior year, and then went over to UConn, played there for 4 years.
Can I ask one question about that before you keep going? So was that a tough call to play junior hockey? Because I would imagine senior year at CM is like where all the glory is.
Yeah, so I was actually one of the first to do it, and a lot of them did it after. For me, it was, and I don't know why I wanted to, but I really wanted to get right into college out of high school. That was something that I thought would be a good situation for me. I had 3 good years at CM. We had won 2 state titles, lost in the finals the other year. I had led the league in scoring. I had, done pretty well. For me, as talking to Holy Cross, some of the schools I was talking to, if I wanted to come to college, I was going to have to go to junior hockey and do well, So I actually graduated from CM. I played for the Walpole Stars for Jack Sweeney, who was a completely different coach than Coach Hansen. Great experience with a really good coach that helped me along the way. And I had a good year there. We had a really good team. There were some guys who were also doing that their senior year, like Joe Rooney went to Boston College, Paul Dufo went to Harvard. They were kind of seniors like I was. And, we had a really good time. It was great. And then I was able to kind of go to UConn at 18, which, probably for my hockey career, knowing what I know now wouldn't have been the best move, but it also allowed me to get into this profession earlier and climb a tough ranks. So listen, I'm never a guy who looks back and, I wish I didn't do that. I'm a move forward each day. So I had a great 4 years at UConn. And then I knew I wanted to do some coaching. So I actually started coaching. So my family has run the River Rats for 20.
Just so we don't lose it, can I ask one question about the UConn? Yeah. I go back and forth about whether to just let you flow or whether to. Yeah. What makes you say, in hindsight, it might not have been the best path, and what would have been a better path and why?
Yeah, I think just being a little bit older. I got there at 18 years old. I soon turned 19, but I would have been, had I aged out of junior hockey, a freshman when I was a junior, and that was when I really started having more success. So I was a little undersized. You go and play against men. So I had a couple injuries my first couple of years. And it was being physically stronger is something that is a huge advantage, So when I was a junior, the freshmen were my age, and that was a good year for me. But at the end of the day, like I said, I had a great 4 years. I really enjoyed it. And, I'm happy with how everything went. But living in it now and having guys age out of junior hockey, it wasn't the same as it is now. Like there wasn't the access to the USHL and learning about it and things like that players have the access to now. This was, we're talking 20 something years ago now. So it certainly made it a little more challenging because I got there at 18. There was guys on my team at 25, and that's a huge difference. And you're even seeing it nowadays in college hockey. Like these 18-year-old freshmen coming in, it's tough to dominate the game when you're playing 25-year-olds, no matter how good you are.
And you were about to go on and say that when you got out, it got you to coaching earlier, and then you were starting to talk about the Rats.
Yeah, so my family's run the River Rats for 25 years or so, maybe longer now. Geez, close to 30 years now. And the U18 team had been good, and they were kind of in a downward slope. My junior year, they were not going to have a team. And I again, at that point in my career, I really wanted to stay in hockey. And as you self-reflect as a person and a player in anything, you can kind of realize, I'm looking at my career numbers. I had 22 career goals. I wasn't going to make a living playing pro hockey. Maybe I could get.
What year did you kind of go D1?
98, I think.
Oh, wow. So that was, I graduated Wesleyan in 98. So that was, And I remembered it was after I graduated, but I guess it was right after I.
Yeah. So they went in 98 and I got there in 2003. So.
Yeah. But it's all relative. You still got that many goals for a D1 program as a hockey player. How many players get to say they did that?
Yeah. So listen, I had a good career. It was fun. So my junior year, the River Rat team was kind of going to fold. And I was like, hey, you know what? I'll keep the team afloat with this guy, Billy Giusti, who was the Needham High coach and a friend of my dad's. And we kind of took the team on, and we weren't very good at all. I remember getting smoked one night at Walter Brown Arena against the Senators. And I'm like, you know what, if I'm going to do this again next year, I'm going to make this team good, and I'm going to really dive into this thing. So I went to Bruce Marshall, who was the head coach of UConn. He's passed away. And, I said, hey, I think, I really want to coach. I'd like to coach the fall team while playing. It's like, I don't think so. So I ended up meeting with the assistants, and they kind of went to Bruce and was like, hey, he's got some good players, because I had put the team together. And they brought me in. They're like, get us a player and you can coach the team. So I'm like, sounds good. So I coached the team again with Billy. Now this year we were very, very good. We had NHLers on the team, So I worked to get them Steve Bergen, who's actually the other assistant. His desk is right behind mine. He's on the road today. I tried to give him Brian Flynn.
Hopefully he's not in Canada.
No, he was. He's back. But I tried to give him Brian Flynn, who they kind of passed on. Brian played about 450 games in the NHL. So I always tell Bergie they should have taken Flynn, not you. So when I did that, I got in and really got a passion for it. So I had some great, players. I mean, Kevin Quick played in the NHL, and Joe Whitney played in the NHL, and Brian Flynn played in the NHL. And obviously it was a different time in the best kids were staying local at that point. So we had a really good team. That's how I kind of met Chris Potter. It's how I met CJ, my boss now. And I was going to go try to play in the East Coast League like everyone would when you finish. And Chris Potter called me. He's like, hey, I need an assistant. My guy just left. Do you know anyone? I'm like, yeah, let me think of some names for you. And I remember still at this point, I was sitting there having lunch one day and I'm like, why don't I go do that? Like, I don't know how good I'm fine. So I called Chris and said, yeah, I got a guy, I'll do it. He's like, yeah, sounds great. So I came down, I worked a couple years for Chris at Wesleyan, which was so resourceful because I was able to learn how to coach at the college level. I was still coaching my River Rat teams who were good, still coaching really good players. I brought on John Hutchin with me by that point, who was my best friend at the time. So I was coaching.
Wait, John Hutchin from Elevate?
Yeah. So I was coaching with
I know him.
With John for River Rats. We were really good. And I was coaching at Wesleyan. I was learning how to be a college coach, video, all that stuff. Great experience. And, from there, the Sacred Heart job came open after 2 years at Wesleyan. I had a good relationship with CJ, who was recruiting a lot of my River Rat kids. He's good friends with Chris Potter. And, I took a job that now, as I sit here in a $100 million rink, it was a lot different back then. We were playing in the Milford Ice Pavilion. It was a harder sell to get people to Sacred Heart. Our campus has since put $1 billion into it. So I got into what would be a tough Division I time for Sacred Heart. We had a good team that year, but we didn't have as much scholarship money. They were going through a time where they were saving up to build all this stuff. So that's kind of how I got to this point. The program has grown exponentially. Like I said, I'm sitting in a palace right now, and it's been a great experience. But that was kind of how I got to the seat I'm in right now.
So going back to the Rats, so how did your family come to start the Rats, and did either of your parents grow up in the game? Like because hockey's a pretty, as you know, way better than me, hockey's a pretty niche sport, although the people that are in it are crazies, but it's not something that people from outside of it tend to find that often.
Yeah. So my dad did, he grew up, played at Canton, went to Clarkson. He had always been a part of the game. So when, the River Rats were a much smaller, it was a different time. People were running things very small. So when I played U18, my dad and Buddy Yandel, who's Keith and Brian Yandel's dad, it goes very full circle here, but they kind of took over and coached the team together. So Brian and I played at CM together. There was a lot of CM and Seb's kids, and, we had a good group. So they kind of took it over and ran it just because, it was like the next guy up. Like, oh, you're running the team, you run it. And then they end up growing it from there all the way down to youth hockey. As I say, it's funny, it goes full circle. My dad, who's still coaching like the U19 team, he had Brian's son on his team this year. So that's kind of how long, when he started coaching.
Is that the 2011 son?
No, the 2006 son. So,
oh, got it.
So
yeah, because I see him at the rink sometimes because my son is a terrier.
So. Yes, right. So Brian and I played together. Buddy and my dad coached the team, and my dad just kind of kept it going. I say my dad, my mom, I feel like does way more of the work than anybody. But so they had been doing it for years since then. So whatever that was, 2001 or so. So 26 years, I guess.
I'm embarrassed I asked that question because I think you mentioned the team year, and then obviously a 2011 wouldn't add up to that. So I'm not going to delete that, but it's just like an example I'm going to leave in of me being a dummy.
Yeah.
And so did your dad coach you growing up?
Yeah. So he coached me pretty much every year growing up until I got to high school. Well, I guess even through high school. So I would say about 90% of my youth hockey, my dad was coaching me. My brother played as well. He coached him a little bit, but seemed to be coaching my team a little bit more.
What percentage of the kids that make it to the Sacred Heart level had dads or moms that coached them growing up?
You know what? It's a good question. I don't know. We've had some for sure over the years. I don't know the whole dynamic to it, but off the top of my head, I can think of a few, that's for sure.
Yeah, so I want to ask a question about that, and also about just recognizing the last names on the jerseys of the kids coming up because of their parents, right? How much of that do you think is genetics, and how much of that do you think is the osmosis of being around it day in and day out, and just everything you soak in from having access to their brain.
You see a lot of coaches' kids be good players. I think it's probably a lot of what you talked about. I mean, the access to it. I mean, at the end of the day, the kid has to want to be good, and if they have the passion, they want to be good. The ability to grow up around the game is enormously beneficial. There's resources that you have access to that others don't. So there's great growth through that. And again, genetics matters. I mean, all this stuff when you're projecting players. And again, I've done this a long time, and I've worked through a lot of different things. Like genetics is a big piece of it. So there's some great squirts that you're like, man, I don't know if that kid's going to be able to. There's factors, right? Like if you're a goalie, how many great goalies are there? And we've had one, and we've had a couple that are small, but there's not many small goalies. So you can be the best goalie, but if you're only 5'6" or something, you're going to be exceptional to get there, So whereas the NHL, I mean, especially when you get to the top of the pyramid, I mean, I don't know. There's one goalie under 6'1" in the NHL. They're just not there. You got the Wolf kid, maybe one more, maybe, but that's about it.
So given your trip and your title, I would imagine that recruiting is a big part of your job?
Yeah. When I self-evaluate myself, I think that's kind of the area that I most identify as, if you will. There's a lot of jobs as a college hockey person. But I would say that's probably the biggest thing. Our staff is in a great spot when you talk about our assistants, because, I've come from a great background of recruiting and knowing the player pool. Steve Bergen, one of our other assistants, has come from the pro side. Like he I coached Steve, but he went right to pro hockey, coached the South Carolina Stingrays as the assistant, was the head coach in South Carolina, was the head coach or assistant coach in the Hershey in the American League. So he's come from a straight coaching background. And Chris Azzano, who has been on for a couple of years now, has kind of been in a mix of that. He's done a lot of coaching, but also, big into recruiting when he was at Army and Colgate and what have you. So, we break up the work really well. So, but, when you identify yourself as a more of a recruiter or more of a coach, if you have to put the bucket on those things, because you do kind of have to pick one or the other, I would say more on the recruiting side.
There are players out there that you can look at and say, from the youngest age, they had a twinkle in their eye, and I always knew they were going to be something special, right? But then there's also players who, like you look at them when they're little and that's how they look, and then they flame out, or you look at them how they're little and they're not even skating yet, or they're not on the radar, and then they're late bloomers. As a recruiter, how do you balance the, before a certain age, who cares because everything changes, versus finding the diamonds in the rough early and then showering them with resources and attention?
Listen, it's a great question. I've being a little bit a part of youth hockey and studying that, I've really seen it. I'd say the first thing, it's super hard to front run. If you are the best, very rarely you're not the best at the end. There's the Sidney Crosbys of the world, where they kind of have been able to front run. But if you're not chasing somebody, it's hard to stay there. Again, genetics play into it. You may feel like you're better than this guy as a player, and then he's 6'4" and you're 5'9". I mean, that's a big difference, So it's all a piece of the puzzle and the evaluation tool, and you try to, go on the history of the recruiting that you've done, as you try to see what the development curve of players that look like that player in the past has been, So everybody wants the player who's going to improve in your program, So the trajectory of it is very important as you're recruiting. If you can get guy going up as opposed to going down, that's a big difference.
Are there things that you look at in the younger players coming up that tend to be more enduring traits of people that end up getting there, or is it really just a guessing game?
I think at the end of the day, the one thing that I think is really important is just straight competitiveness. I give a lot of we have a great camp here at Sacred Heart. There's a lot of good players, and I talked to him about it. I'm like, your best chance to succeed is to be competitive in everything you do. Whether you're trying to play a men's league game, a pickup game, a split season game, the national championship game, like, you can't turn it off. The best are competitive and want to win at all times, So that competitiveness is important. I think when I recruit, I look at it, there's a lot of intangibles that you need to get to the Division I level, and you usually need a couple of them, So, like, if you're a great skater and you have a great IQ but a limited stick, like, you probably can do it, You usually need a couple of them. But there's a lot of times where, if you can do one thing exceptionally well, you may be able to overcome a lot of deficiencies, I use, and I'm heading up there later today at Avon Old Farms. I remember when I first started coaching, I went to the game, and I remember hearing about how great Cam Atkinson, who's just retiring, he's a great player, Nick Bonino, same boat, now coaching, were. And I remember watching warm-ups and the first shift, and I'm like, this Atkinson kid, I mean, he can fly. He looks awesome. Bonino's skating was just terrible. Like, he looked sloppy. And then I'm like, this kid's not going to be able to do it. I mean, the puck dropped and Nick Bonino would just dominate the game without being able to skate, without, like, looking at him and being like, wow, this kid's, like, he doesn't look the part at all, But his brain was just so elite, that he just made these plays and controlled the game. And there's people like that who have that success. And obviously, those are two players who both went to the NHL and both had great careers. But if you can excel at one thing, that's great. But the competitiveness at the end of the day is probably the thing that I have most grown to think is the most important, because the goalposts keep changing on these players, and it's like, oh, the fifth year's back. Oh, there's CHL players. Oh, you can add pro players. So these guys are dealing with such adversity in their career, thinking, oh, I'm going to commit. Now it's pushed back. I'm this, I'm that. The guys who are just head down, as competitive as I can be, those are the players who have the best chance, I think.
And does that tend to be consistent in terms of, like, the level of compete versus your peers to your left and your right as a little guy or girl versus later on, like, maybe skills and ability and size and strength and speed, like, all that stuff can change, but does compete change and does IQ change, or is it kind of innate?
Listen, I mean, I think you can always work on, both, and there's always times where sometimes it just clicks on players, Again, it goes to genetics and stuff. If two people are working out next to each other and do the exact same things with two different genetics, your body's going to change differently. You know what I mean? So those play into factors. But for the most part, these competitive people who want to win, it's something that's ingrained in you, and it's something that everyone says. And as I talk to players all the time, I'm like, you got to try to do something every day that makes you better. When kids are 14 and 15 and I have a chance to talk to them, well, what can I do? You can get there. You got to work at it every day. It's like, you want to be a kid. Okay. Your friends are going to the beach. We're leaving at 8. Great. I'm going to get up at 7 and shoot 200 pucks. I'm going to do something every day that is a sacrifice that makes me better, and those are things that players and people can do, but they're hard. Everybody says they want to get to that level, but the sacrifices that need to be made to get to that level are hard.
One narrative that I've heard as I've made the rounds is that that why rush it? That hockey's a late blooming game, and it's a long road, and dominate where you are before moving to the next level. Everyone's in a rush. Why are they in a rush? Another narrative I hear is you want to play at a high level as you can, as early as you can, and push yourself as far out of your comfort zone as you can, because, like, success begets success and opportunity begets opportunity. And as you get older, the window, closes more and more in terms of the ability to get to those levels. And the level, and each level up kind of plucks from that level of the level down. I mean, as a player, as a family, what's your advice for how to navigate that, and what to optimize for, and what to stress about versus what to just let ride, if you will?
there's a million players over my time, a million, let's call it tens or 20s of players who have left somewhere too early and done, damage to their stock and themselves as a player. It is really hard to come back from that. You know what I mean? I believe you want to play at the highest level you can where you're going to have success. It's a hard thing to exactly say, but you're better off staying longer than leaving early. It is probably the easiest way I can word that scenario. I think New England kids have a great situation because there's plenty of great options for them, and all of them have the ability to play at their age group for at least the fall season. So if you're not on an academy, you're at least able to play your age in the fall and be judged against your peers. And then you can play at high school level or the prep level and what have you and play against some older guys. So I think that's a great example of players being able to do that. Where I think players get in trouble is I'm going to leave my prep school, I'm going to go to junior hockey, and they're going to realize how hard it can be. It becomes a business, you're away from home, it's harder, And I think the older you are when you do that, the easier it is to deal with it.
On the one hand, if you want to play at the highest levels where you can be successful, like you said, the way to do that is to specialize, right? And shoot all those pucks and play spring hockey and go to the showcases and get your name out there and build relationships and build a track record and beef up your skills in the off season, right? And there's pressure to do that younger and younger and younger and younger.
Yep.
I talk to very successful coaches that have been in the game a long time who say, it's a long game and you got to just tune that out and get them off the ice, put the bag away, pick up other sports, make them the best athlete you can. Don't burn them out. Don't grind them. Don't lead to overuse injuries, right? Like, don't make them hate the game. Don't make it feel like a job, right? And it's like, gosh, these seem like they're directly contradictory. And one thing I wonder too, is it an old school, new school thing too? And just how to reconcile, what is sage advice and what is dated advice and what's right for you. And granted, every family and every kid is different, but what do you think? What are you going to do with your kids?
Yeah, well, we'll see. My kids are still young, and my thing. And again, I've had a lot of thoughts on this. And listen, when you talk about competitiveness, it's not just in hockey. You have to be competitive in the gym. You have to be competitive when you're playing basketball or playing football with your friends. I am fully supportive of you need to be the best athlete you can be. But I'm also in the boat that if a kid wants to be on the ice and play, and if they're driving this, I don't think it's bad for them to be working on their game. Again, that doesn't mean they need to be playing in a tournament every weekend, But if they love the game and they want to do skills and they're still playing football with their friends and they're still doing those things, I think it's fine. Like I do believe that you can train year-round in a way that is productive for players to develop and also not burn out. Now, having said that, if the parent is the one driving this, you need to be doing skills and what have you. It is not going to be productive, And at that time, it's put the bag away, give it a little bit of time off, and then pick it back up at that point. You know what I mean? I think that is the more, answer that I have for that. If it's kid driven, you don't need to hide his bag. Hey, I want to go play. There's people who just love getting on the ice. I want to do skills. I want to go play with my friends. I want to do this. Like, go for it. People will say like, hey, like, what do you think? Like, I want to play in the Chowder Cup because my friends are playing. And I'm like, well, if you're playing in the Chowder Cup because you want to get seen, I don't know how many people are going to watch that at this point. It's a different market. But if you're playing because all your friends are playing and you're really looking forward to it, go play. Like that's something that you're going to enjoy. So I don't worry about burnout as long as it's player driven. That's my take on it. But I certainly get the play other sports and do these things. And, but if a player has the passion to continue to do it, I struggle to take it away from them,
So bringing it around a bit to the college hockey world. So I had Ken Martell on the show recently, and from a USIA hockey standpoint, some of the recent changes with the Canadian major juniors and such, are scary because it means a harder road for U.S. players, right? I had Sean Hogan on from College Hockey Inc. and his tail's wagging, right? Because he's like, oh man, like the NCAA hockey is going to get a lot better, right? And then I had a couple USHL GMs on that haven't shipped yet, but their perspective was, man, get some college coaches on the show because I want to hear what they're thinking and what their world looks like. So here we are. You're a D1 college coach. What does your world look like? Like, what are your thoughts on the changes, the implications on college hockey, the implication on U.S. players coming up, and also the implications on you and how you guys are managing your recruiting, your pipeline, your player development, et cetera?
I would start with this, that it is a way different time. I've done this job for, I don't know how long, 16, 17, 18 years now. And the job is completely different than it was 5 years ago. The CHL, the pro players have completely changed the life of recruiting. I used to take great pride in knowing every kid who was committing, or 95% of kids who were committing Division I. I'll see 4 guys commit. I've never seen them. I don't know these kids. Or, my boss will be like, how's this kid who just committed from the SP to Niagara? I have no idea, So it is much more challenging, I'm going to give you the short answer to this. I think our teams will all get better. You're coaching better players. But it's far less spots in college hockey for deserving players, a lot of those being deserving American players. And for me, that is a really tough pill to swallow, because I think there's going to be some really good players that have grown up in this neck of the woods who, when I grew up, my dream was to play Division I college hockey, and it felt attainable, It is very challenging at this time, and unless there's more teams or what have you, it is just getting more challenging and more challenging because all the CHL, there's pro players, there's everything. So, what I really loved most about this job was providing a spot for a New England or a Long Island or a New Jersey kid to reach his dream, and come here and battle. And it's not, obviously you want to recruit the guys, the Danforths that play in the NHL, like that's great. But the real joy for me was those fringe guys who have finally, made it for their dream. And that's getting harder and harder now, and, I think that's disappointing on my end because, that's something that I took great enjoyment in, So listen, we're getting better players, so the product gets better, but everyone's product gets better. So it's not any different. It's hard, but I do feel for the American kid who the path just got harder for. And it's been hard for like 5 years with COVID, the 5th year. And it's just these people keep getting hit, So how is it? It's really tough. It was a job that I think all of us felt like we had a great handle on. And now it's a much more challenging job that it's really hard to have a handle on.
Well, that's how I feel about leaving youth hockey and entering U14. So
yeah, no,
it's like a little micro example.
yeah. I mean, it certainly changes. It's just, at least there it's, local, it's the same players, there's a few that get added in, they go to boarding school and things like that. Here you're talking about so many players added in and so many relationships you've had with recruits. I mean, remember, I recruited a lot of players who were committed before this CHL thing, and that makes things really challenging. And when I talk to my peers, that's probably the worst part is you have guys who may not have a home anymore due to this CHL stuff, and that's tough.
So growing up, I mean, the world I was exposed to in hockey was all about kind of play where you live and town hockey. And the narrative is that, Massachusetts used to be like that, how Minnesota is now, right? But Peter Masters, when he was on the show, was saying, actually, like, the club's always existed. It was just, back then it was the 10% of the crazies, and now it's like 90%. But it's not like it wasn't there. But regardless, it seems like through a combination of privatization and all these clubs at the youth level, and then at the college level, things like the portal, that it's gotten a lot more individualistic and transactional. Do you agree or disagree? And yeah, how do you feel about well, actually, there's a related question to that, because you said a big part of your job was recruiting, right? Like, where does development fit into the picture at the college level as well?
Less important, but still important. Very transactional on both sides of the player and the team. You make decisions, that you might not have in years past. So, it is in a tough place, and it's disappointing in some of the things that have to happen, So, yeah, I mean, listen, you obviously you work to develop your players, but there are players that'll play in 4 colleges in 4 years, and that did not happen not long ago, So the decision that it's not a good fit for a player comes so much earlier than it used to, and that's tough.
Has some of this, do you think, been driving the rise of these player development coaches outside of the walls of the teams that work with the players on their own in the off season and such, and might watch their film? And is that popping up much with your players? And if so, how much interaction do you have with them? And what do you think about their existence?
Yeah, listen, a little bit. Everyone has a job to do. So I don't get mad at anyone doing the job that they have been, tasked to do. So there's a lot of factors that have come into play that have changed things and what have you, but it's the world you live in. So people are like, hey, do you like this? The answer is it doesn't really matter whether you like it or not. You need to adapt and do the job to the best of your ability. That's what you're paid to do.
There's a narrative out there that as the individual skills have gotten better, the team cohesiveness and IQ, thinking the game, has gotten worse. Do you agree or disagree?
I mean, the game changes in every generation, So, the technology, the sticks, that you could score, you could shoot it so much harder. I mean, the game has changed a little bit from 20 years ago and 40 years ago and what have you. Do I think the IQ is down? Not necessarily. I think the game just moves faster, But do I think it's harder to have a team? Yeah, of course, because back then, you went to Sacred Heart and that was your 4-year college. Not everyone, probably 30 or 40% of these kids are playing in all different colleges now, So you don't feel the same, it's more about your team this year than the program itself. That's kind of how you have to recruit it and deal with it now.
Do you think that genie's too far out of the bottle, or are there ways to maybe get it back to a more kind of enduring, cohesive feeling and brand?
I think that is out of the bottle. It's hard to put it back. I mean, things change and you sound like the old guys, like back in my day, so I try not to do that as much. But yeah, listen, I think it just changes, it's just the world you live in.
So looking forwards, I mean, if you had a wish or a few wishes of changes that are maybe outside of the scope of your control that would help put the game on a better path, what would it be and why?
You just got to keep moving forward with the time. So, it is what it is. Listen, the best thing that could ever happen, and it is not easy done, is there would be more teams and more spots and more, there's so many deserving players that could play Division I hockey that aren't right now, But in the world you live in, you're paid to win. You have to get the best players. There's so few teams. I don't see anything that I say, oh, wow, that's something that I would change right now. But lucky I'm not a commissioner or anything like that.
Well, what's the best way to get more teams? And what's holding us back?
Funding. It's just too expensive. You got to build a rink. I mean, we put a $100 million rink. You have to do it. The expense to start it is so extreme. There's so much emphasis on paying athletes and football and basketball, the expense it takes for all those to win. It's very hard to start any of these programs at this point.
If the teams are focusing more on recruiting and less on development, given the nature of what's happening out there, as a player, if you're seeking to develop, where should that development come from?
There's great resources to develop still. There's great strength coaches. There's great skills coaches. There's great programs. It's all about becoming the best player you can possibly be and letting the chips fall as they may. If you compete every day, there is a spot for you within hockey. It's just a matter of where that ends up being. So within, grind every day, get with the right coaches, the right strength coaches. You can have that path. I mean, there's still going to be Division I players and NHL players. It's just a harder road right now. But there are great paths out there. There's great programs in Connecticut and Massachusetts and New Jersey that do an awesome job developing hockey players, and they're going to get their players to this level. There's just a little less of them now.
What strategies have you found to be most effective given the increasing revolving door, if you will, in college hockey to get that cohesiveness within the season that you're in?
It's building relationships with your players. I mean, that's the importance of it, from the recruiting time to the meetings while you're here. that's what it comes down to. It's relating and speaking and helping those players and doing whatever you can to help them.
Last topic. I mean, it's less of a charged one, but it's one I'm curious about. Is just the kind of the rise in data and analytics, and how much is it still kind of the eye test, and you got to see it, and you'll just know it when you see it, versus call it the Moneyball effect.
Yeah, listen, when I started this, I was one of the younger assistants. I'm starting to grow to be one of the older ones. So you have people doing all different things, and this analytic stuff is really pretty new. So for me, and doing this a long time, you still have a lot of the eye tests, but this becomes a big factor to things. It really does, So that is a real thing. I think the answer is 5 or 6 years down the road, we'll have a better idea of what the right path to do is.
And as a program, do you guys like to be, kind of early in the guinea pigs, or do you like to watch and wait till something's a little more proven and reliable before you lean in? Are you changing what skill sets you get around the table as a team to start experimenting and get this expertise?
I mean, listen, I think for me, especially with all the change that keeps happening, we're more of a wait and see a little bit. We kind of dip our toes into each little area and see what works for us. We feel like we can be a little bit of bigger fish within our league due to the facilities and things, so we don't have to jump off the diving board on one thing and put all the eggs in that basket. But you want to test every avenue you possibly can and try to find what's best for you in the program.
Well, for the U.S. players that are coming up that do dream of playing, Division I college hockey, as the road keeps getting tougher and as more is required of them in terms of like later entry point and maybe sometimes repeating twice, like juniors, billet families, like all the stuff, right? At what point is it not giving up on the dream? And at what point, like when is it healthy ambition and when is it like, reckless and out of touch with reality?
Well, I think there's always a place to play. And if you want to play, whether it's club or Division I, Division III, I would never tell anyone not to chase their dream. I think there's a lot of players who smartly have started to go to club hockey because they're realistic to where they will end up. But if you have a passion for it and you want to keep doing it, chase the dream and go as long as you can. I mean, the work will, you have till 21, the workforce will be there, So it contradicts itself to what I'm saying. But if the player, it's player driven, as I talked about earlier, and they really have a passion for it, do it. What ends up happening to a lot of people is they get to junior hockey and they're like, my friends are in college and this just doesn't seem as fun for me at this point. You know what I mean? That changes things for players, So as long as they're enjoying it, chase it as long as you can. Get to the highest level you can get to, But it's got to be their decision driven through them. That's for sure. Because junior hockey's hard.
I want to ask the same question about aspiring D1 coaches. It sounds like the game is changing so much and that the skill set and style of the coaches is needing to adapt so much. What advice do you have for coaches coming up about the recipe for success, steps they should take, things they should keep in mind, things they should be aware of?
Yeah, I mean, listen, everything has changed, so it's challenging now. I would have a better answer for you years ago, Hard work still is great, Knowing the player pool is at the paramount, but it's really hard to do right now, So I'm gonna need more time to get back to you on the best advice I could give. I think it's a really hard time right now.
And if you look out over the next 5-10 years, what's your optimism level about the future of the game?
The game's hockey's in a great place. College sports are, there's a lot going on. There's lawsuits all the time, So as things get hopefully finally settled in, I think it'll make things a little bit easier, But right now there's the goalposts move every day. All of a sudden it was CHL players and then it was pro players. And it's just a really hard dynamic.
Yeah. What I'm hearing from you, it sounds almost less about the state of the state or like the way things are. And it sounds more about just longing for some consistency so that you know how things are going to be so you can actually dig in and do the work without constantly getting thrashed.
100%. I would love to know exactly the rules and how it's going to play out and how we do it and where the goalposts are. So when you're recruiting players, that the goalposts are 100, 120 yards apart, You know what I mean? As opposed to that moving from 70 to 150, and you have these guys being recruited, and then the pool changes. It's really challenging.
What is leading to the thrash? Why is it thrashing so much?
I mean, the lawsuits, everything keeps changing. There's pro kids. I mean, I didn't see the 10 guys who played in the East Coast League and the American League playing this year. Like, I had no idea, So that changes everything. So now you get calls from agents on pro guys. It just continues to change, So I don't know. We'll see.
Well, for me, it's a fun time to be trying to sort through it because it seems like it's moving so fast that no one can keep up with it. Even the people that are maybe even especially the people that are in it because they have day jobs that they're just trying to stay on the treadmill.
I'm hoping by the time your son being younger, it's hopefully settled in by the time they're at college. That's for sure. It's been a tough couple of years. I'm sure if you talk to other people, they would it's tough. It is. It's a tough time.
Well, I'm super appreciative for you making the time to come on, Scott, and we covered a lot of ground here.
We did. I appreciate you having me.
Is there anything we didn't cover that you wish we did, or any parting words for listeners?
Again, I think hockey is a great sport, and for all players, this stuff will sort itself out through the NCAA and the homes at the end. It's just play the game you love, work hard, attack it every day. You will find a home. I do believe that, Hopefully there'll be a little more clarity for players in the coming years here. But yeah, listen, it's a great game. I feel like I was, negative on what it is of what's happened. It's not the game. I love the game. I love coaching college hockey. I love recruiting these players. It's just where it's gone to, has made things a little more challenging, but I'm sure it'll be back. The game itself is in a great spot. Players are really good. It's fun to coach them. They're good kids. I love relating to all of our players and other players, So, my parting words is if you love the game, work at it, attack it every day, and the right home will be there for you.
Yeah, well, it can be frustrating for players and families to try to sort through. And I think one thing this episode is going to do is just humanize it because, because it's like, oh, you think it's hard for you guys. Like, it's hard for us too, right? So
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
Scott, thank you. Best of luck. Yeah, best of luck for the rest of the season. And I'm just, again, appreciative that you made the time.
You got it. I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for listening to Puck Academy. If you enjoyed this episode, follow or subscribe wherever you get your podcast and share it with someone serious about their game. See you next week.